chapter 3. I'm going to try to do not very much commenting, but I got to read this because it's amazing how this goes along with what's happening today. In Daniel chapter 3, we're starting at verse 4. Very familiar story. I just want to kind of bring out a few points. You know, I saw on one of the major news affiliates, I saw a doctor come on the air, and they were talking to them, and he said something that just kind of got me. He said this, he said, COVID-19 isn't religious. He said, your faith can't protect you from it. Because they were kind of talking about churches opening. And I thought, you know, you just kind of made me where I don't want to hear anything else you've got to say.
They got to heard it going whack, 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 whack.
He said, COVID-19 isn't religious, and your faith can't protect you from it. No, he doesn't. He don't know what we know. It says, then and herald cried aloud to you, it's commanded, O people, nations, and languages. Keep going. Then at what time you hear the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, the psaltery, the dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. Keep going. And whosoever falleth not down and worship shall that same hour be cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Keep going. Therefore at that time when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, the psaltery, and all kinds of music, all the peoples, the nations, and languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Keep going. Wherefore at that time certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. Keep going. They spake and said to the king Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Keep going. Thou, O king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, the psaltery, and the dulcimer, and all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the golden image. Keep going. And whosoever falleth not down and worshipeth should be cast, that he should be cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Keep going. There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar in his rage and fury commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they brought forth these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, do not ye serve my gods nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Next verse. Now, if ye be ready at what time you hear the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, the psaltery, the dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the image which I have made, well. But if ye worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? You see, what's happening now in this world that we live in, whether you realize it or not, battle lines are being drawn. Yeah. And you, by decisions of your choice, by an act of your own will, are choosing sides. Remember when when Moses came down from the mountain and they had been doing all these things, and God said, okay, here's the deal. Who's on the Lord's side? Get over here. And that's what's happening now. There has been months and months and months of people to have deep reflection on who they really are and what they really are and whose side they are really on. Because whether you want to believe this or not, Satan is the god of this world. He's the prince of the power of the air, and he's the god of the airwaves, and he has a tremendous propaganda machine going on right now to influence you, to tell you that if you do not bow down to everything you're being told, that your feet are going to be held to the fire. And what you're going to have to make a decision is this, is who am I? What am I going to be going forward? Because, you know, we hear so much about the new normal and what's it going to be going out there. You know, you hear all these things they're talking about this time next year still having restaurants and putting up plexiglass between the tables. That's just ridiculous. That's people speaking in fear.
Yes. Oh boy.
Please hear what I'm saying. Because we're at a time and a season in this world that you're going to have to make a decision. How big is my God? And what is he able to do? Because like that guy said, if you're going to go along with what Nebuchadnezzar told Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and if you're going to listen to him saying, you know what? If you will comply with what I said, okay.
Yeah.
But if not, who or what is going to save you from this boogeyman that's been created in society that's going to get you if you come out? Hello?
Yes.
How many knows that's the message that's going out? You know, it's amazing to me that there's so many Pentecostals that I've grown up with, and it's really kind of disappointing to hear all of these Pentecostals who have sung all these songs, I know my God can do it, and all these songs they've sang, and they get up and they shout, and I've seen all these things, and then the devil gives them a threat and says, boo. And they're ready just to cave in and give out, give in and give out. He says, who is that God that can deliver you out of my hands? Keep going. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said, O king, Nebuchadnezzar, we're not even careful to answer you in this matter. God gave us some of these.
Yeah.
Amen.
Keep going. If it be so. Now watch this now. He said, if you don't bow down, I'm going to throw you in the fire, and what God is able to deliver you out of my hands. He said, if it be so. What are they saying? They're saying, if you do throw us in there. If you do what you say, our God who we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will he will deliver us out of your hand. Do you see the statement of faith?
Yeah.
Now watch this now. See, I've heard it preached my whole life and say like, well, if God does or if God doesn't. That's not what they're saying. They're saying, if it's so that you throw me in there, because he's asked the question, who's able to deliver you? Because he thought he was greater than God. You see that?
Yeah.
And they say, well, if it be so you throw us in there, then you understand our God is able to deliver us out of your hand. Watch this, next verse. But if not, he's saying, if you throw us in there, God will deliver us. But if you don't, be it known unto you, O king, we will not serve your gods nor worship the image which you set up. They said, if you throw us in there, our God will deliver us. But if you don't throw us in there, understand this right now, we ain't bound down to the idol. under those circumstances, we're not bowing down. If you carry out the threat, our God will deliver us.
Oh, yes, amen.
But if you don't carry out your threat, we ain't bowing down. Do you see that? That's what it's saying.
Yes.
Next verse. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace. Heat furnace one 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. He said heat it up 7 times hotter than normal. Without having to read all of that, he heated up so much that when he threw them in, it killed the guards, both the guards that threw them in. Right?
Amen.
Now go to verse 24. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished, same thing. And he rose up in haste and spake and said to his counselors, Did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? And they answered and said unto the king, True, O king. Next verse. He answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And the form of the fourth is like the Son of God.
Amazing, he knew it as that.
If you will stand and make a stand for who you are and believe and dare to say, God's going to see me through this. Regardless of what everybody else is saying, whoever else is drinking the Kool-Aid, I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. Because I choose, facts are facts, but there's something that trumps it, which is called truth. And God's word is true. And therefore we choose, if you're a believer, if this is really true, then truth trumps the facts. And you have to choose truth in the face of the facts sometimes. Is this real or not? Amen?
Amen.
Now watch this, okay? Let's go to 1 Peter 5. Casting all your care upon him because he cares for you. Next verse. Be sober. Be vigilant. Why? Because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. Next verse. Whom resist steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same afflictions are accomplished in your brethren that are in the world. The same thing that the enemy is, the same fears you have, the same concerns you have, everybody's dealing with them. But we have an adversary. Just like Nebuchadnezzar, he wants to instill fear. He wants to say, listen, if you're going to do this, if you're going to make a commitment to God, if you're going to start going to church, and if you're going to get involved, get ready, because when you do, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire. Yes. Question is, are you going to allow the intimidation to cause you to back off and back down? Because that's the whole purpose of the threat of Nebuchadnezzar to them. Just bow down. If you'll just do this, now maybe you misunderstood. Maybe there's a misunderstanding. If you go ahead and just comply, it'll all be okay. What a lie. Thank you for that. You just said it before I brought it. But you gotta understand, if you're going to make a stand, a faith stand like them, you got to know this. God will back me up.
Amen.
God will back me up. He'll come through for me. He'll back me up. And as a result of that, I'm not careful and I'm not shy about the stand that I'm making, knowing who my God is and his faithfulness. And that he sees and he knows and understands what's going on. Amen? Now watch this. Proverbs, talking about, how many says the devil's going about as a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour, right?
Right.
Look at Proverbs 22 and 13. It says, the slothful man, here's what he says. There's a lion in the street. There's a lion without. I shall be slain in the streets. This is the perception of someone who's not trusting God, who doesn't really know God. It says, there's something bad out there. And if I go out there, it's going to get me. You see that? It says there's a lion in this, there's a lion. There's a lion out there, and I shall be slain in the streets. If I go out there, I just know it's going to get me. And that's one of the reasons why there's a lot of empty pews today. Not just here, but everywhere. Because God's people has got this perspective. There's something out there. And if I go out there, it's going to get me. Am I wrong? No, I'm right. Amen? So what's the difference in perception between Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and this person? It's do you know your God? Is this really real? Are they like that medical expert who goes, well, COVID-19, your faith can save you from that? Well, I beg to differ. I beg to differ. I know my God, regardless of whatever the enemy may threaten, I know my God can deliver me. And I know my God can deliver, regardless of what it may be, whatever comes along. You've got to understand that whatever comes along in life, that greater is He that's in you than anything the devil's got in this world. Amen. Amen? Do you understand? Amen. In closing, I'm going to say this. Joshua chapter 24. Verse 4, so I'll start with verse 14. Now watch this. Now for Joshua is about to end his ministry. He's leaving the children of Israel. He's giving his farewell speech to the people. And he says, now therefore fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in truth. Watch this. And put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the flood. That's talking about, that flood's talking about the Red Sea. When they crossed the Red Sea. You see, Egypt in the Bible is always a type of the world. That's the reason why you see, the comparison is a type of the new birth. They're in the world, they're coming out of the world, they were baptized and going through the Red Sea. Closed up behind them, now they're on the other side, walking in newness of life. And they go to Mount Sinai and they have God desires to have a personal relationship with Him going forward. But those people, as they were going through this newness of life, all they talked about was going back to Egypt. Always talked about, we never had it this bad. Oh, if we could only get back to Egypt. Yeah. Every time something got hard, they talk about going back. Yeah. In a time like this, you cannot allow these circumstances to cause this break in what has been your relationship with God. You're either going to draw closer, or you're going to draw back. One of two things is going to happen. As a result of this, there are people who've been going to church for years and years and years that their relationship with God is going to come out of this thing less than what it was before it went into it because of fear. And while this is going on, the enemy is saying, why don't you go back? Just go on back to Egypt. Going back to what you used to do. Going back. You ain't got to go to church every night. You ain't got to be a fanatic. All you got to do is just listen. What the enemy wants you to do is he wants to go around in your life and set fires in your life. Yes. And get you wrapped up and consumed of you just taking care of your own problems, so that you will not even have the slightest inclination to do anything, to have any kind of ministry, to where you're actually reaching out and caring about other people and ministering to people. He wants you to get wrapped up in self. Yes. So that you know, it's my kids and this and my kids and look at all that I'm going through. And he can, listen, if he understands he can give you the threat of putting you in the fire, and if your relationship is not, bring it on, because my God is greater. If that's not who you are, then he can use those same things in your life for the rest of your life to keep you in submission and keep you bowed down and keep you from fulfilling your purpose and what God has called you to do. Just by issuing the threat, he can get you to shut up and sit back down. Because right now there are people in the sound of my voice right now. The enemy has done this to you 1,000 times and keeps doing it. Why? Because it always works. Yes. It always works. He can get you to have things rise up. He can have people come against you. And instead of you going on and you being what God has said and prophesied and declared he's called you to be, he can try to cause you to keep doing maintenance and trying to beat down and deal with people and whoever that is harassing you and bothering you and got your mind on them, and you end up spending the majority of percentage of your life dealing with people. And if you're doing that, then you're letting the devil set the agenda in your life instead of God. God wants to set the agenda and set your future and have you get your eyes on him and go on forward. Instead of dealing with all these things in the past that the enemy has just got you chained down with and you're dragging it along. And every time you start trying to do something for God, he throws another weight on the chain. And you look back and go like, oh, it can't be done. See there? Are you mad at me yet? Watch this. Verse 15. Watch this. And if it seems evil to you to serve the Lord, wait a minute. It's God's people. God's covenant people. He's telling them. He's a reverence God. Serve him. Follow him. He goes, but if it's a bad thing, if church is a bad thing, if you really think going to church is a bad thing, and you think it's too hard and it's not worth the trouble, make up your mind. Make up your mind. Get your mind made up. And if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom you're going to serve. Whether it be the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, Egypt, or back in the world, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you... What? In other words, what you used to know, what you're dealing with right now, the gods of the Amorites. But he said, by the way, as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. So here's the question. It's very interesting the fact that the Spirit of God put the word out saying, choose me today. Saying, who are you going to serve? Make a decision today. Who are you going to serve? Believe it or not, I really am done. Because I had to say this because it confirmed with what God has said, the Spirit of God has said. And I want you to, there's no way you can orchestrate that. So please understand something. I don't know what God has planned for you in the future, but I would dare to say it's something really important. Are are you going to allow the enemy to stifle you and cause you to live a self-focused life? Turn inward, and where it's all about yourself. What I want, my desires, what I need, it's all about me. Are you going to allow God to take you and allow you to take those character traits that you have and those gifts and those talents that you have and let Him make an impact on this generation? That's up to you. And that's up to you and Him going forward. I would just want to encourage you today. How many can say this with me? As for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord.
We are going to serve the Lord.
Amen. Let's stand to our feet today.